I think we're gonna go get it started so that we can
Finish on time. Well, good morning. I'm Beatrice Valdez, and I'm the controller for SCAC. And with me presenting, we have Tracy Gosassi, and she's our senior accountant for the projects team. We would like to thank you for joining us today. We hope that this training is useful for you and for the PMs in charge of the programs. Today, we're going to be covering the agenda that you see in front of us. We won't be doing individual introductions to everybody here so that we can finish on time. But if you guys can put in your name and title and agency in the chat, that will help us identify who attended in case you guys had follow-up questions. We are recording the presentation, so we'll be making the presentation available to you afterwards. You should have received the training packages. David, I don't know if you forwarded those yesterday or not, but if you haven't, we'll make sure that we'll send it again. Okay. If you have them available, it will be nice if you can follow up with the paper copy or the PDF copy as we're presenting. Tracy, can you please monitor if there's people, with questions or the hand raised, throughout, and I'll do the same thing when you're presenting on your side.
Okay, B.
So if you guys have any questions, please make sure you add it in the chat so that it makes it easier for us to follow up if we're not responding right away to you. We can respond when we take little pauses depending on what we add, or we can do a question and answers also at the end of the presentation. So today we're going to go over the MOU rate confirmation worksheet, scope of work approval form, and the invoice templates are primarily the three worksheets and documents that we are going to cover. And then obviously any requirements in regards to how you submit the invoice, the timing, the documentation that is required to be included. And we'll also go over some of the most common errors and mistakes that we've seen in the past when subrecipients are submitting invoices, to SCAC. We did try, with this new RIP program, we did try to create templates for you so that should minimize the work in regards to putting together, the package. Hopefully with the idea that the formulas, in the templates, simplifies, the submit of those invoices to SCAC on a monthly basis. We're going to go ahead and then discuss the MOU rate confirmation sheet. Most of you will have already been working with our budget and grants team on submitting the required information to fill out this form. Your PM, I had already requested from you what we call a NICRA, which is a negotiated indirect cost rate proposal that is approved by your federal agency. If you have one, it will have your approved rate for French and for indirect costs, So if you submitted that to us, or budget and grants team had already reviewed that information and then identified if we approving that rate. Obviously, we already in fiscal year 24-25, so we're expecting agencies to be submitting that fiscal year rate or NICRA, that approved NICRA for fiscal year 24-25. If you don't have an approved NICRA for 24-25 and you're still working with your federal agency on getting that approved, you can go ahead and submit it to us as soon as it becomes available. And then you can request for retroactive reimbursement for those French and indirect costs. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to reimburse you for that until that rate is approved. Some other agencies, though, might not have a federally approved rate, so you may opt to use the 15% de minimis rate that the federal government allows you to use. If that is the case, then our budget and grants team will have requested from you to fill out the certification that you're utilizing the 15% de minimis rate. If you are one of those agencies, it would be nice if you can write down in the chat that you are using the 15% rate so that we can get a count of how many people, how many subrecipients we have using that. We do have an example that we're going to go over the invoice template for the 50% de minimis. But if no one is using it, we can skip that or do at the end the 50, that presentation. So if you're not utilizing it, you just want to make sure that is clear that we're going to give you different examples, and you don't have to use all the examples of all the invoice templates. You're only going to use the one that is applicable to your agency.
We do have 1B in the chat.
Okay, perfect. So we'll definitely go over that 15% worksheet. So in addition to your French and indirect costs, usually the example that we have in here in front of you, we usually have a one-to-one relationship, for the vast majority, where agencies, get one French rate approved and one indirect rate approved. If your agency by any chance has multiple rates approved, obviously it's going to show up in your NICRA, but it would be nice for us when you providing that information to us, it will be nice to let us know if the employees that you're going to be claiming reimbursement for, which French rate and which indirect rate they're applicable. Just to give you an example, some agencies might have a rate for exempt or professional or operations employees that are different for either the French or for the overhead. Like you have a program that is transit, and your transit program has a different overhead that it is your construction, program or your planning program. So if you are an agency like that, it will be nice if you can actually help us identify which rates you're going to be using. While we are going to list all of them, when you're submitting your invoice template, it's going to make it easier if we know that, you're using, your French rate 1 or your French rate 2. And we obviously going to ask you for that as part of the invoice submittal. But if it's always going to be the same French and overhead rate, because as your employees are all in the planning, you're doing a planning program, then it would be nice that we only reflect in here the one that you're going to use, so that people do not get confused and expecting to see 2 or 3 different rates in your invoice template. We are not approving personnel rates at this time, even though the spreadsheet is here. We are verifying that as you're submitting your invoices. The other thing to pay attention to in regards to your French and indirect is that usually the majority of the instances, agencies will have a base of salary and benefits where we apply the French and indirect rate. If your agency is using a different base, for example, total modified direct cost is another base for applying your overhead. It would be nice if you can actually write that in the chat so that we can identify if we have an agency like that, because that will require a different template. It will probably give you something similar to the 15% de minimis template. So far that we know, no one right here will have that at this moment. But if you are not using salary and benefits to allocate your French and indirect, please let us know today, so that we can create a different template and provide you the right template, for your submittal. The form itself is pretty simple. Once a budget and grants reviews those rates, they will indicate the rate that is approved and for the period that is approved on. And then if there's any, who the analyst was that was reviewing that, if there's any changes to it, for example, usually those rates are approved only on an annual basis. So next fiscal year, as soon as you have your next rates approval, next year's approval, we will need you guys to submit that new federally approved rate to us. And then our budget and grants team will then update this spreadsheet with a revision for the new rate for that period of time. And that will be applicable then for any invoices that take place in fiscal year 25 and 26. Okay.
Sorry, there's a question.
Sure. Go ahead.
As a nonprofit, not a government agency, what is the rate we should be using?
Usually nonprofits will also have, if you don't have, if you don't, I mean, if you're not receiving federal funds, enough federal funds for you to do negotiated indirect cost rate, we do have in a spreadsheet that we can provide to you for submitting and calculating your fringe benefits. But that requires us to, or require you to get that review by an external accountant to verify that the information that you're submitting in regards to your costs for fringe are applicable. And then you can submit utilizing the 50% de minimis rate, for the indirect. So there's two different activities taking place because fringe is separate from indirect. And so for French, we have a different worksheet. And then for indirect, we just have like a certification saying that, yes, you're going to use the 15% rate. So please, reach out to us if you have any further questions. I mean, your PM should be able to provide you that spreadsheet. That's something that they get from budget and grants team, but we can definitely provide it to you after the end of the meeting. If you haven't discussed with your PM, utilizing, the 15% de minimis or utilizing, that fringe rate calculation. And I think, Tracy, do you have it handy? I know that we did it in another training, we actually went over that. And we
We
can do that.
included, mhm, it's
Okay.
included
Okay. So it's
at the end.
included at the end?
Mhm.
Okay. So then at the end, we can go over that if we have enough time. And then not, the rest of the attendees can decide if they want to attend to that component of the training because it doesn't apply to you. So we have 3 examples that Tracy is going to go over because of the rate confirmation sheet, so you can see them as part of going over how to fill the invoice package. So I won't open those and let Tracy take care of that. The next one is your scope of work approval form. So once your MOU is, you guys are signing your MOU, then you are discussing, with your PM, your scope of work. And the approval of that scope of work is going to be memorialized in this form. And we call it Exhibit B or a SAF, for a scope of approval form. This, what we try to do with this is that we will try to expedite the approval of those MOUs by have a very broad scope of work within the body of the MOU, and then reference this scope of work approval form as a legal document that memorializes exactly all the tasks and your budget associated for those tasks. So this approval form is then approved internally by us in a SCAC from our department, one of our division chiefs or department executive directors, and then by somebody that is legal authorized to approve it on your side for the subrecipients. We're expecting to get a SAF approved at the beginning of the MOU, and if there's any changes throughout the course of your MOU, a revision can be made. You need to coordinate those revisions, obviously, with your program manager. We're expecting those revisions to get approved and submit before they get executed. So if you need a reallocation of the budget by task, you need to request for that reallocation before you exceed, your budget. There's specific things that cannot be approved through an amendment to the SAF. For example, if the total MOU amount needs to change, either up or down, or if the period of that MOU needs to be extended, that requires an MOU amendment, that has to go through the whole legal process and approval. But if you just changing budget within your task, or some of the deliverables are changed and you're working with your PM on that, those activities can be changed through an amendment of this form, and that is to simplify how many people are reviewing it, time that takes, we don't have to get legal involved with that component. It's just PMs getting involved with negotiating what the changes need to be made. So as you can see here within the form, it will have the original scope, the first day, time to get approved. We're going to be including in here an effective date. You're going to have your task and subtask delineated in here. And then if you have a breakdown of your budget, so if you're going to have the staff costs, consultants, or just, total, if your MOU requires a match, or if you're providing a match that is not required, and then estimated beginning and ending days for when you're expecting to complete, those tasks. That's what we're expecting to see, in the scope of work approval. We will be utilizing this to update your invoice template. So the first time that you receive the invoice template from us, you will be receiving one that already has some of the information, filled out on your behalf, so that you can start with the right template. So that's why it's critical for us to have a good understanding. If you're using a 50% de minimis, if you have a different base than salary and benefits, because we want to fill out the spreadsheet or the invoice template that is appropriate for your agency. So when you receive it, you're just ready to start putting in the information about your expenses, for the year, for that period that you're invoicing, usually monthly. Okay. So any questions so far? Obviously, the total budget is going to match your MOU budget. Some programs would allow you to claim admin. Some programs do not provide you or the ability to claim for admin. Some of you are only getting a lump sum payment for the housing trust or for another trust that is, providing loans to individuals. And if that's the case, obviously there won't be any staff reimbursement or any cost reimbursement, for any consultants or things like that. On those cases, we do have a different template, so we'll go over the differences for those programs. And I see a hand
There's
ready.
a question.
Okay. Go ahead, Ian.
So I'm just curious, and I'm wondering if you could just elaborate a little bit more on the process if what we have identified as sort of our anticipated staffing and consulting budget, if that changes over the course of the grant period, what is the process for amending the SAF and or the MOU? Is because we have an estimate about how much these things are going to cost, but we don't exactly know since it's new consultants and it's a new scope of work. So could you just like what happens if we spend a little bit less or a little bit more than we were anticipating on what we have already outlined in our budget?
Sure. So obviously, you might be procuring for a new consultant. So right now you're doing an estimate, for example, and if you procure for it and when you got your responses, you already identify that, the costs are going to be exceeding, your estimated budget. I recommend that you discuss with the PM at that point before you award, your consultant contract, what needs to be taking place, either, we're not anticipating increasing the total amount of the MOU at this point of time. I don't know if that might change over a period of the program because, I don't know, somebody might have savings, but right now we're not anticipating increasing anybody's budget. So if you have additional consultant costs or higher than you anticipated, the discussion is discussing it with the PM in regards to, do you reallocate, budget from your staffing costs? What are your options at that point of time? But like I said, we at this point of time, we're not anticipating increasing the overall budget for any of our subrecipients. The process would be just, emailing your PM, calling the PM and saying, I know this is going to be over. Sometimes you might be going over as you actually performing the work, like in your staffing, for example, you anticipate, let's say 100K, and then suddenly you get into 90,000, but you're not near the end of the program or your contract. You might at that point of time, discuss with the PM what you need to do to reallocate budget. But we're just expecting that communication to take place before you go over the budget. We're expecting the recipients to be monitoring what is taking place, with the program, with your MOU.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
simple communication, the PM will discuss with you, then a little revised form takes place. It gets signed by the two agencies. And then at that point of time, then the PM will be updating your invoice template with the revised changes, so
Okay.
whatever changes got made, if you reallocated budget between staffing and consultant or between one program and another, like you might want to reduce your admin costs so that you have more in your consultant costs, and consultant happens to be in your project management while the admin cost happens to be in your admin cost task, So those changes then, once approved, then your PM will be updating the latest invoice template that you have submitted, with the new information, send it back to you with your approved SAF. And then at that point of time, you can start invoicing based on the new invoice template and the new SAF form,
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah. And thank you for that question. And it helps kind of walk people through it. So that is pretty much the steps in regards to how, why we put this in place is really to try to, expedite the process, but also have a document that, we can always go back and refer and saying, this is the latest approved scope of work. This is the latest budget. And then everybody's on the same page, and when we'll discuss the documentation that you need in just a minute as part of the submittal invoice. So it will be later on in the presentation. So the invoice template, like I mentioned, we're going to have 4 different examples. And we have 3 different templates. The reason why we have 4 different examples is because some of you agencies may have a payroll register and timesheets to support your labor cost. And some other agencies may have a labor report that they're able to run from their financial accounting system to support the labor costs, So the examples are exactly the same. It's just the supporting documentation that is different. And Tracy will go over that, in a lot of detail. The other template that we have is the 15% de minimis because there's calculations that are different from when you use an approved rate for your salary and benefits base for your French and indirect cost. And the third example that we're going to be going over would be if you only are receiving a lump sum payment for establishing that housing trust, to make loans. So we simplified the invoice template for those that don't have any consultant costs or labor costs or any ODC costs besides the lump sum. Okay. So we'll have those 3 examples. So here, the templates itself will contain, 1 through 7 that are right here, or variation of that. So if you having an invoice template that is only for your loans, you're not going to have as many tabs to fill out. If you're having one that has labor and consultant costs and other costs, then you might have, all 7. If you have a labor report and you don't need to do timesheets, you only have 6, So I just wanted to kind of give you an idea, that what the template contains, and how we set it up. So the way that we establish the template is that all the templates are going to start with giving you directions on how to fill it out, and that is our invoice submittal instructions tab. It will give you directions, it will walk you through it, and then it'll ask you to check mark that you actually completed all the stuff, and then that you actually included all the supporting documentation. So that's the first purpose of that tab. Then you're gonna go into your summary page, and the summary page is gonna bring information in from the remainder of the tabs. So it's pretty much formula driven for the vast majority. Your progress report is exactly what it is. You're gonna tell us what you did, during the month that you're invoicing us or the quarter that you're invoicing us, depending on how your MOU was written. Your detailed expenses will be in your line item billing. That's where you're going to go into explaining why you spent, if you had labor, if you had consultant costs, if you are requesting a lump sum payment, that's where you're going to incorporate that. If you have a program that is issuing loans, because not everybody here might be issuing a loan, if you're getting money to issue loans, then you're going to utilize the loan issue details tab. And like I said, we're going to go over all of them, but just giving you a perspective of what you're expecting to see in your template. And then if you don't have a labor report, we are providing you with a timesheet template that you need to fill out, unless you have already timesheets that can in your system that you can provide to us. If you have ODC cost, then you need to also fill out the ODC summary tab so that you can incorporate in there all the detail that you need. So if you have $100,000 in ODC, then we want to see where do you spend the $100,000, in this tab. So the examples are coming up, and Tracy will go in detail. The next 20 slides in the presentation, though, besides giving you, the examples in the PDFs that we're providing you, and then giving you a copy of this training, in the presentation itself, we included screen printouts of an example, so that you can actually see how the documents are, linked, or the different tabs are linked within the spreadsheet. And then you can see the relationship of why it's critical to make sure that we fill out the template correctly. Okay. So I'm going to go over a few of these slides. We're not going to go over all 20 because technically they're examples of what Tracy is going to go live over, But as you can see in this particular slide, this is the cost summary page.
There's a comment. Can you increase the slide size on the screen?
Yes, let's try that because this is, I don't know that I can't.
Do you know how to do that?
In presentation mode? Or maybe if I do it in the actual presentation and not on a presentation mode.
I think the viewer can press Control and then zoom in to make the screen bigger.
On their side.
On their side, yeah.
Okay, that works. Can you guys try it and see if it works for you? If not, I'll take it out of the presentation mode and then show it in just regular, PowerPoint. Are we getting any feedback?
She said that doesn't work.
It doesn't work?
Is that any better?
Yes, they said it's better. What you did earlier.
Oh, what I did earlier.
And then I got out of it. Perfect. Okay, so let's see in here. So on the left side, you're going to see the cost summary tab. And as you can see, and Tracy will go into a lot of details, just walking you through the 3 examples, but just giving you a quick overview. Everything that is blue are formula related. Either there's a formula because it's calculating a sum or a subtraction, or there's a link to another tab. So under your cost summary document, this is where you're going to give the information, the overall information about your MOU. You know, who is your PM, the MOU number, you know, the work order or OWP number, the period that you're invoicing, the period of your MOU. So this information here in the front end or the top portion of it will be information that gets carried forward to the rest of the tabs so that you don't have to be keying that information throughout. And then you can technically see it as I move to the right, then that information now is in blue in this particular tab. And this is the line item billing. So that's how we related one tab to the next. This information that you see in here that is blue, which includes your program and your cost categories or your task, you know, your major task for your invoicing and your overall budget for that task will then be coming in. It's not keying here. It's going to be coming in from your line item billing. Okay. So we did lock the template so that you don't overwrite the formulas. So it's not because we don't trust people, it's because we want to make sure that the formulas work the appropriate way and that we don't have to be checking to make sure that something were overwritten by mistake, you know, as people are keying information. Okay. So everything that you see here in blue are formula related. The example of what we reflecting in here is giving you some information that if you have like closing cost or loans issue and you're requesting a loan payment or an advance for your loans to establish your trust, you know, those costs we're expecting them to be seen and being claimed in your ODC section of the template in the line item billing. So if you got awarded $4 million for your loan program, or like in this example, it's 4.2, we're expecting to see lump sum payment request of 4.2, you know, to establish your loan program. That information then gets passed on into here. You got 4.2. In this particular example, the agency that received the 4.2 did a one-to-one match for that program. So then they also put in $4.2 million as an in-kind match with a total loan value to be issued of 8.2. Okay. So this is just giving you an idea of how those documents or the tabs relate between each other. Same thing is happening, you know, this linkage between the different tabs are taking place, you know, throughout, you know. So not all of it is coming in into the summary page. You know, some of them might be coming in from the ODC summary to the line item billing. You know, some of them might be coming in from the progress report tab. So it's very critical that if you see a field that needs an input, for you to actually fill it out. Otherwise, you know, we're going to be returning that invoice template, you know, back to you. Let me close this piece and go to the next page. Okay. This one is to show you when you are actually doing a 15% de minimis rate. That 15, your ODC for the lump sum is still below, but it's going to be excluded for that modified calculation. So we're not going to give you 15% overhead over the lump sum payment. That's pretty much what we wanted to point out in here, that your 15% de minimis rate calculation only includes expenses on the modified total direct cost basis, and that is only direct labor, direct services and supplies, and then some ODCs that are allowable for the federal government, you know, so not all the ODCs are allowable. And then if you actually are passing through to a subrecipient, you know, then those pass-throughs up to $50,000, which I don't believe for this program we have anybody passing through to another subrecipient or a subrecipient. And then the lump sum payment template that is only for the loan is much simpler than what you saw on the two other examples, because we have is a loan payment. We don't have any other task, associated with it, So the template for your cost summary is a lot simpler, than it is for the other two templates. Again, we were trying to simplify the templates depending on what you were awarded for. If you guys see that something is not working for you, once we provide it to you, please, reach out to us to make sure that we identify if there's a problem with the template or if we need to create a revised template for whatever reason, okay? With that in mind, Tracy's now going to go over the detail. She's going to show you all the examples and all the required documentation in there. And then I'm going to go after that and then give you an overview of how you're supposed to submit the invoice, the timing, the order of that invoice, and then issues that we see when people, submit invoices to us.
Thank you, B. So I will be sharing my screen now and go over the invoice template in details. Let me share my screen. Okay. Sorry, can you see my screen? The Excel.
Yes.
Let me share again. Okay, you're seeing the invoice template? Okay. So the first two samples that we're going to show you are going to use the NOVA reimbursement template with lump sum payment and match option. The first sample will show you an example when you're using the payroll registers and timesheets as the direct labor supporting documentations, as well as a situation when you're claiming for the lump sum payment upfront. The second sample will show you a labor report as the direct labor supporting document, as well as a situation where you're issuing some loans during the current billing period. The third sample is using the 15% de minimis template for a subrecipient who does not have their own NICRA. And then the last sample we'll be showing you is using the NOFA lending single lump sum payment with match option template. With that said, let's go over each one in details. So the first invoice template, this one that I'm showing you consists of, again, 7 tabs. And then the first tab, which is included in all the templates, is the instruction for invoice submittal. It describes the other 6 tabs and provides detailed guidelines on what SCAC is looking for in the supporting documents that must be submitted in the package, such as you can see here what is needed in the progress report, how to enter the charges including any local in-kind match contributions on the line item billing, what information is needed for each loan issued, what we are looking for in the labor summary report or payroll report, and what kind of supporting documents and proof of payments we're looking for to support all project costs, in-kind match, and loans issued. There's a checklist at the top. So as each agency is completing each tab, and as you're gathering the supporting documents, you can check off the list to ensure All the required fields have been entered and all the required documents have been included. So the cost reimbursement summary tab. This tab summarizes all the charges billed at the task level and at the overall level. It gives you an idea where the project stands in terms of the year-to-date expenditure and budget balances by task and at the overall level. There is also a table that summarizes your local in-kind match requirements at the overall level. And this table will give you an idea of where you stand in terms of your matching requirements throughout the project to ensure you will meet the required match by the end of the project. There are also the tables summarizing the information for any loans issued to date for the program, if your program allows you to do so, including the closing costs, such as any origination fees, underwriting fees, and any other fees incurred for issuing a loan. And those fees shall not exceed 2% of the total loan amount issued, including all the legal fees associated with issuing those loans. And as for the legal fees itself, there shall not exceed $10,000 per loan. So most of the data here will come, as mentioned earlier, will come from the line item billing tab over here, which we will go over shortly. Everything in the light blue color are formula based and do not require any entry, and then anything in light gray is where an entry is required. So first you will start by entering the invoice date, number, billing period, MOU terms, agency name, and other required fields over here. And then anything that falls outside the MOU term are not billable to SCEC. You will also enter, if you're issuing loans for your program, you will enter the number of loans issued to date over here, previously loan issued amount, and closing costs for previously loans issued, the number of loans issued over here as well, and the legal fees for previously loans issued, so we can keep track of the progress throughout the MOU term. You will also indicate where the agency wishes for SCEC to send the payment to over here. You will enter the name of the authorized official who will be signing the invoice and the signature date and title and the name. And then at the end, when you're ready to submit the invoice package, you will print the invoice template into a PDF file. And this page specifically must be printed on agency's letterhead and signed by the authorized official with either a digital PDF signature, wet signature, or DocuSign. So it will look something like this for a wet signature or a digital signature. So the next tab is your progress report. This tab describes the cumulative progress of work completed throughout the MOU term. When the agency wishes to use their own progress report template, the cumulative percent completion by task and overall level will still need to be entered as shown in this template. This is because the line item billing tab is picking up those percentages from this tab. So it's crucial that even if you're using your own template, let's say you're using a Word document for the progress report as an attachment, you will still need to enter these percentages here. And then, so next is the line item billing. This tab is where you will enter the charges you are claiming for the billing period, which is broken down by task across the columns and by cost categories down the rows. The last task or column over here is intended for your local in-kind match requirements if applicable. You may enter the matching costs, which includes any direct labor costs, ODCs, and consultant costs in the required fields under that column, the last column. Okay, so this first sample, first of all the task numbers and the task names and the budget amounts over here, budget amounts are will be entered at the beginning by SCAC, by the assigned accountants to help you to ensure that all the information are entered based on the approved SAF at the beginning for each of the executed MOU. So let's flip to the sample SAF for 1 second so I can show you where the information is coming from. So this is the sample SAF that we provided. You can see that the approval date was June 22nd, 2018. And this invoice sample is for billing period ending February 28, 2019. So it falls within it's taking place after the approval date, so it's eligible cost. And then you can see that on the SAF, it shows the budget for task A, project 5% admin grantee. The total budget is 35,000. And then you can see that's entered here, task A, project 5% admin grantee, 35,000. And task B, project management grantee, 35,000. Task B, project management grantee, 35,000. And so on. And at the end, you can see over here, there's also, so all this information we entered at the main task level. And then you can see task 4, for instance, initiate trust fund programming. The budget is 140,000. And that's what's entered here. And there's the last task is for a lump sum payment to issue loans. The total budget is 4.2 million. And lump sum payment, task 5, 4.2 million. And then the last task or the last column is for the in-kind match. And then we enter it over here based on the last column on the SAF. It shows for the local and in-kind match. And we enter the budget at the overall level, which shows 4.2 million over here. And then the grand total budget is excluding the in-kind match budget because this is just is for the project cost only without the match. That way the information will be linked back to this table where you can track your project costs throughout the duration of the MOU, showing the 5,000 project costs and the project cost 5,000 and the 4.2 is for your match in-kind match requirement over here. Okay, so let's see. So this information will be entered again at the beginning, so you can use it to submit your monthly or quarterly invoices. And whenever there's an amendment to the scope of work form and that affected the budget, SCAC PM will update the latest invoice Excel file for you and email that file together with the approved amended SAF to you, so you can use the updated file to submit subsequent invoices. Now for this example, you will be first entering the direct labor charges for the current billing period under the correct task that has budget for staff costs. You can, for instance, let's go back to the SAF. You can see that the staff budget is budgeted under task A, task B, and there's no staff cost in task 1. And staff budget task 2. There's staff budget under task 3. and no but staff budget under task 4, and none under task 5. So you cannot be claiming staff hours under the task that doesn't have budget for staff costs. So let's go back here. So first you will enter the position title and the name for each employee on each line. And then you will enter their actual billing hourly rates over here based on the payroll registers. So based on the payroll registers provided for the pay periods that correspond to the current billing period. And then you will enter the total hours work over here under each of the tasks for each employee. The hours will be entered in our timesheet template over here. So for instance, over here, Margaret Jones is, she worked a total of 112.5 hours under task B. And then she also worked 41.5 hours for your in-kind match. So the hours are entered in the timesheet template for Margaret Jones over here. And you can see that since the billing period is for the month ending in February 28, 2019, the timesheet is provided for the whole entire month for each of the workday that she worked on the project. And then the task name and the task number must be indicated here as shown in this sample, including any in-kind match. So you can see that the hours for task B has been entered here for a total of 112.5. And then she did work on some in-kind match hours for a total of 41.5 hours. And that tied back to what's entered in this line item billing for the invoice. Okay. So, and then a reference number must also be entered in column A to link all the charges in this line item billing back to the supporting documents for those charges. So you can see that the hours came from the timesheet template, and the reference number is reference number 1, and you can see the same reference is entered here for the hours. Okay, so the same thing with the other task. So the next employee that worked on this project is John Smith, senior analyst, and he worked a total of 16 hours under task A and 43.5 hours for the in-kind match. And then a second timesheet template needs to be entered for John Smith's hours. So you can see over here the employee name is John Smith, and then the employees also needs to sign the timesheet and then date it. So I'll show you the signed version later. So the hours are entered here. You can see that he worked on task A for a total of 16 hours, and then in-kind match over here, in-kind match 43.5 hours. And that reconciled back to the line item billing. Task 16 hours under task A, 43.5. So the signed timesheets will look something like this. All the timesheets must be signed by the employee who work on, to ensure it's accurate, and signed it and date over here. Okay, and then so now let's look at the payroll registers that is provided to support their actual payroll rate for the billing period. In this example, the supporting documents was labeled number 4. So let's flip to the supporting documents. So you can see that the same reference number is also labeled on the supporting documents. This is the payroll register for Margaret Jones for the pay period February 1st, 2019 through February 15, 2019. And there should be a second one for February 16 through February 28, 2019. So that period corresponds back to the billing period. Okay. So then it's been shown here that her rate is $71.15 per hour, and that is what is claimed here, $71.15. Same thing with John Smith. John Smith over here, $43.27. $43.27. Okay. And in the case where the employee is on the salary base, I have an example over here for Juan Gomez. For instance, if let's say he's on a salary base, then you will have to show the, the calculation to convert this salary to hourly rate for billing purposes. For instance, you can multiply it by the number of the pay frequencies annually and divided by the total annual work hours for the employee. So in this case, Juan's rate is $76.92 per hour for every hour, and that's what's entered here in the line item billing. Okay, so the next
Excuse me.
section.
Could I ask a question real quick about
Y-
the
yes.
payroll register?
Mm-hmm.
So does that document have to reflect how many hours per task are being spent? Or does that just occur on the invoicing template?
So if your agency doesn't have a labor report in your system, then if you're using payroll registers, you only need to show the rate, the hourly rate, because you will be providing us with the timesheets on top of the payroll register.
So
But
but
yeah,
the timesheets okay, so these are
yes, this is where you're gonna show which task belongs to which hour you work on. So that's why you will have to enter all the task information here, and then the dates and all the hours that you work for those tasks.
that information doesn't need to be on the actual like pay
Payroll,
stub.
no.
Okay, thank
And
you.
then the second example later on will be showing you a labor report option. If your agency has that option, then you will have to show all the task information, hourly rate for employee in that report.
Was it enough to say that they're working on SCAG REAP? Because some of our employees are going to be working part-time on this part, but not all of their hours are going to go towards the SCAG REAP project. So is it enough to say the amount of hours that they're working on SCAG REAP and then clarify which tasks in the invoicing template? Does that make
Correct.
sense?
They don't have to put all 80, like if for the week, they don't have to put all 40 hours of work. They only have to identify how many hours they work for RIP.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next section will be your indirect and fringe. Over here, we will be entering your rates at the beginning, but the rates came from the MOU rate confirmation sheet at the beginning that's been approved by our budget and grants department. And if the rates have changed from what was previously approved by our BNG department, you may please submit documentation to our SCAC PM project manager before an invoice is due, so the new rates can be reviewed and approved before an invoice is submitted to SCAC. So let me show you an example over here. So in this sample, this is the MOU rate that was approved. And then you can see that for this, they approved it by fiscal year. So in this case, the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019, the fringe rate that was approved was 22.34%. And then same thing for the IC that was approved for the fiscal year was 96.78%. And since that this billing period falls within that fiscal year, so those are the rates that have been entered here to claim for the invoice. Okay, and the rest of the costs will be automatically calculated based on these percentages. And the next section are for the other direct costs. Any other direct costs spent on the project must be entered under the correct task along with the reference number in column A to the corresponding supporting documents. For this example, based on the sample SAF, since the staff charges are only budgeted under task A, B, and 3, as we've seen before. Let me show you again. So the staff costs here are only for task A, B, and task 3. Those are the only tasks where you can also claim some other direct costs. Okay, so as a note for travel charges, please refer to the state's travel policy as noted in the MOU section 6, I believe, to ensure that you don't claim for more than the allowed rates or per diem amounts. If you have any ODCs, you will also need to enter the detailed information under the ODC summary tab over here. Okay, so as you can see in this example, for instance, you're claiming $25 travel charges for task B, and the supporting documents was reference number 5. So let's flip to the supporting documents over here. Over here, reference number 7, and it's indicated that it's for task B completion, and the date of purchase fall within the billing period, so that's good. And the charges are for Uber travel, $25, and then it was paid by credit card, and it's shown here, the information. So it's acceptable supporting documents. And so in terms of the supporting documents, proof of payment, we can accept either a copy of check, EFT or ACH confirmation, or bank or credit card statement. However, in this example, you can see that the last 4 digits of the credit card was already shown in the receipt, so this is acceptable in this case. And then when you're claiming for your lump sum payment portion of the MOU to fund the established housing trust loan program, you will enter the claim in this ODC section under the corresponding task labeled lump sum on the side. Sorry. Over here, task 5 is for your lump sum payment to issue the loans. And then under the lump sum, you're gonna label it lump sum payment, other direct costs. And in this example, the budget for the loan was 4.2 million, as you've seen in the SAF. So that's what you're claiming for here upfront. And it's been indicated in the MOU that there's no backup needed for this claim. So there's no reference needed here. And however, as indicated on the instructions tab over here, let me show you over here. So upon receiving and utilizing the lump sum payment throughout the program, supporting documentation such as a cash transfer, confirmation, or a journal entry report should be also provided on the following invoice as proof that the lump sum payment has been received and went into the account for issuing those loans. And then if your program requires you to provide in-kind match or in-kind contributions, and your in-kind contributions are related to loans or cash, you will also enter those amounts in this ODC cost category under the last column over here. And supporting documentation should also be provided to support the in-kind match, including any cash contribution for loans as proof that the payment to the loan program has been made. So next section is for your consultant charges or contractor costs incurred during the billing period for the project. So you will enter those charges here under the correct task, and the reference number is entered in column A as well. In this example, again, based on the sample SAF, since the consultant charges are only budgeted under task 1 and above, so you can see that the consultant charges, the second column here, is only budgeted under task 1, task 2, task 3, and 4. You can only claim those charges under those tasks. So for instance, over here, there's a consultant charges from census under task 3 for 120,800, and the supporting document was reference number 8. So let's flip to the supporting document. So over here, you're gonna support the claim by attaching a copy of the paid invoice and its reference number 8. And you can see that it's billed to City of Anywhere for the time period February 1st to February 28, 2019, which falls within the billing period. And it's indicated it's for task 3 completion and the amount. And then you're going to provide us with a proof of payment as well to show that the invoice has been paid. Okay. And then the second consultant charges over here is for your in-kind match in this example for $1,046.05 from ABC Company and reference number 9. So you're gonna attach the same copy of paid invoice over here, reference number 9, and it's indicated here that it's for your in-kind match contribution. The charges fall within the billing period and the total amount and a copy of the proof of payment. Okay. And at the end over here, there's a formula to calculate your grand total based on all the charges that have been entered. And then we are subtracting the total with your local in-kind match over here so that the project cost over here will be your total due. And it's also, let me show you. So total due $4,342,455.90 will be shown here in your cost reimbursement summary as the current invoice over here. And wait, let's see. Minus the in-kind match. Okay. And at the bottom, you will enter your previously cumulative reimbursement amount after disallowances, if any, for all tasks. For instance, if you submitted an invoice for $10,000 and in the previous month, and then later on $2,000 is disallowed. On the subsequent invoice, you will then enter $8,000 here instead of the $10,000 that you submitted originally. And then for your in-kind match, you will also enter the cumulative in-kind match over here. The cumulative in-kind match provided previously here, so we can keep track of your progress as well. And then the cost reimbursement summary will then pick up the amount and summarize it in the table to give you the year-to-date in-kind match. Okay, so let's go to the second example. So the second example is exactly the same as the first one, except in the supporting document section, where we're going to show you the situation where you're going to use a labor report to support your direct labor charges. So in this example, then when you're using a labor report, you will not be using the timesheet template. That's why it's blank over here. So instead, then you're gonna support the charges using your labor report. So for instance, this is the report that is provided. You can see that the report shows the date, which corresponds to the billing period. And then it's indicated over here that Sarah Doe, management analyst, worked 4.5 hours under task A, and then 82.5 hours under task B. And then along with, she had some hours for in-kind match. Oh no, so, okay, we'll show you that later. So let's flip to the supporting documents. So again, in the labor report, it's shown the task for SCAC REAP, task A, and then it's for Sarah Doe, management analyst, and then the date that she worked, and then her hourly rate, and then the total hours that she worked for that period. So it corresponds back to the charges here, 4.5 for task A. And then she also worked 82.5 hours for task B, and the task is shown here as well, the information. Okay, and then in this case, we also have an example for in-kind match. So William D., the accountant, he worked a total of 3 hours as an in-kind match. And then over here in the labor report is also shown at the end. The total for in-kind match, William D., and 3 hours. So at the end, the total cost in the labor report correspond to the grand total over here. So you can see that a total of 165, including the in-kind match, 65 hours, and 7,000, including your in-kind match.
A couple of tips, the in-kind match, if you are incurring in-kind match throughout, the period of the program, obviously included in your monthly invoices, and then we request, backup supporting for that. But if you actually incur all your in-kind match at the beginning or at the end, we're not checking to make sure that you actually put an in-kind match every single invoice. We're just verifying that if you had it, that you have supporting documentation, and then at the end of your MOU, you have met 100% of your in-kind match. Those are the two goals for that. Then if you go to the timesheets, Tracy, just wanted to make a comment. For those of you who actually have to use timesheets because you don't have a labor report and you have multiple employees working, this timesheet tab is not linked into the rest of the spreadsheet. So if you want to copy this tab and provide it to each of the employees that work for the RIP program, for this particular program, you're more than welcome to do that. So that they can actually key the hours that they're working as they're working it, so they don't have to come back at the end of the month and then trying to remember how many hours they work, for task 1 versus task 2, So you more than welcome to do that, provided they can fill it out. You can copy the tab, or the, back into the Excel spreadsheet at the end of the month from each of your employees, I think that's the easiest way for you to manage, especially when you have several employees and when you're billing a whole month or a whole quarter, per se. Otherwise, people will not remember, how many hours they work on a particular program. Okay. So
Thank you,
just a
B.
couple tips.
Thank you. So next in this example, the agency had claimed the lump sum payment previously, the 4.2 million. So you can see that over here. Hold on. It's been entered, the 4.2 million has been entered as the previously reimbursed amount. So in this example, we are showing you that the agency actually issued 2 loans in this current billing period, and then the loan information is then entered in the loans issued details tab over here. So, you will be entering the loan number that you issued for that month, the loan amount, the closing costs, and the legal fees. And then we have built in some formulas here to calculate what is your acceptable closing cost based on the rule that they cannot exceed 2% of the loan amount, including any legal fees. And then the legal fees, we also put a formula that they cannot exceed $10,000 per loan or the acceptable closing cost itself. So for each of the loan over here that you issued, you also have to provide us with, the supporting documents to show what the closing costs are entered here correspond to what you also paid and the legal fees. So for instance, let's flip to the sample here that we provided. Okay, so for instance, this is for the first loan that was issued. The loan number is shown here, and then it's entered here. And then the loan amount, 505,000, that came from here. And then the closing cost you're showing here, $9,311.26. And the breakdown can be found in the following pages. And then the legal fees was $3,000. And that's what's entered here in these gray fields. And then you're also providing us with a copy of the, the wire documentation as a proof that you did issue those loans. And then this is the closing cost that was paid to close the loans as a down payment as well. Okay, same thing with the second loan. The same information is entered. So the agency issued $1 million loan. These are the closing costs, $21,311.26. And then the legal fees for this one, they had an 11,000 legal fees. So in this case, since the legal fees exceed the $10,000 mark, then we are only accepting the $10,000. And then at the end, all these totals will be brought forward to the cost reimbursement summary as well. Over here at the bottom. And then you will just need to enter, the number of loans issued to date cumulatively, since this is the first month that you're issuing loans. So the total will just be those 2. But as for the subsequent invoice, when you issue more, then this is going to be the cumulative amount, cumulative number of loans. And then that's it for this one. The rest of the example will be the same. And then the third one is for the 15% de minimis. Okay, so for this one, the only difference is gonna be in the line item billing. And so at the top, you'll still be listing, your direct labor information for each of your employee. And then when it comes to the fringe, you'll still be using the fringe that's approved, on your MOU rate confirmation up front. You can see that this is the rate that was approved, but for 15% the minimus, then there's gonna be indicated, it's gonna be indicated here that it's gonna be 15%, and the box will be checked to indicate that you're using 15%, the minimus. So then at the end over here, the 15% is gonna be automatically calculated for you, and it's embedded in the template already, so you don't have to worry about that. And let me see. So, and if you have any sub award that's less than 50,000, you're gonna enter it in this section to be included in the calculation for the minimus. So we did have one example over here for the in-kind match earlier. The $1,000 is entered here. And then if you have any ODCs that's spent that's considered as not allowable for the minimus calculation, they're gonna, such as rental costs, equipment costs, or the lump sum payment that we mentioned earlier, any sponsorship, gift cards, or other costs, that's gonna be entered here. Okay, and then if your program requires you to provide an in-kind match, or and your in-kind contributions are related to loans or cash, this is where you're gonna enter it as well, but under the in-kind match column. So those costs will not be included in the 15% calculation. And okay, we also give you the example if you're claiming the lump sum payment, it's also entered in this section under the lump sum payment task. And then for all these ODCs, and the last section will be for the sub award that's above 50,000. So in this example, we have one example for census. Let's say their contract is beyond the 50,000, so you're gonna enter those costs here. Okay, and then for all the ODCs, you're going to enter the detailed information in each of the tab. We have one tab for the costs that are included in the calculation over here, and then the details are entered here, and then another tab for those that are excluded from the calculation. So such as the lump sum payment, the details are entered here. Okay, so the rest of the example will be the same. So lastly, I'm going to show you really quick the last template, which is for the NOVA single lump sum. So for this template, you know, we included the instructions, what is required for in terms of supporting documents, what you need to enter in the cost reimbursement summary, and then the progress report. And then if you have any loans issued for the program, the same requirement has been mentioned from earlier is also included here. So for this template, then you'll need to enter the same information as to what the invoice date and billing period. And then the budget here, we will enter it for you at the beginning based on the SAF. And then when it comes to claiming for the single lump sum, then you will enter it in the current invoice field over here. And as you throughout the MOU, as you report your progress, then since there's no more payment to be made, then you will enter the 4.2 as your previously invoiced amount, and then the current invoice will just be 0. And then you will just utilize the progress report to continue reporting the progress for the MOU. So at the end, the overall percentage of work completion will be 100% once you have completed all your progress. And then you will also report any in-kind match requirements for the project over here. You will enter, the current in-kind match provided as an overall at the overall level, and then when you report on your subsequent invoice, then you will transfer the information to here and keep adding to the total. Same thing with loans issued information as shown in the previous example. This is showing the same, information over here. You will enter the information in the gray field over here, along with the loans issued detailed tab. So I think that covers my presentation for today. I will hand it back to B.
And I know we're running a little bit over time, but I think it's critical if you guys stay, or at least, we'll get the presentation. We'll finish through the presentation and send it out if you're unable to stay. But the next component is discussing how you submit the invoice. And let me share my screen. So invoices are due on the 21st of the month following the month period that you actually invoicing. We're expecting, I think most of the MOUs that we have in place for the NOVA program are all on a monthly basis. But we listed here quarterly or monthly depending on your particular MOU. We're expecting you to print out all the tabs that you fill out in the invoice template, and then to sign and print out the first page with your letterhead, and then have a legal representative, sign out the first page that reflects the actual invoice, which is your cost summary, document. That one needs to be reflected on how much you're invoicing and then being signed off. Either the signature needs to be either wet signature, or it can be PDF signature or DocuSign signature, but we do expecting a signature. We're not expecting people to just write somebody's name in it. We do want the PDF document to be included with the Excel document. And we want the Excel document because in the event that we need to eventually make changes to it, either because the rates changed or your SAF, you had an amendment change to your budget, we have the most current updated invoice to fill out that information, and then we can return it back to you for the next invoice. Okay. Those two documents then need to be submitted to accounts payable at scoc.ca.gov. We're expecting your line item billing to have references to your supporting documentation, as Tracy explained. You can use any reference structure that you want. I think the examples that Tracy had was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but you can use A, B, C, D, A plus -1. I mean, it doesn't matter which reference style you want to use, as long as you're listing it in the line item billing, and then your supporting documentation has the same number that we can easily type back where your information is coming from. That should simplify the review of your invoice, obviously expedite it, for approval. If you have consultants, we do recommend that you track your consultant in a separate spreadsheet for all your consultants, that invoices that you're submitting, because a very common mistake that we've seen in the past is when agencies submit for reimbursement for the same consultant invoice more than once, just because they, misplaced it, or they didn't think they invoiced it in the past and now they including it, and they forgot, that you had already been reimbursed for that. If you having changes again to your rates, either French, overhead, or your scope of work approval form, we want those changes to be done as soon as possible. Don't wait until you submit an invoice, because at that point of time, we need to approve them and then make you update your invoice template, and then you have to resubmit your invoice template. Changes to those things need to be taking place before, like if you changing your allocation of the budget, we already spoke about it. They should be taking place before you overspend on a particular line item. And again, reminder for the French and overhead rates, usually they're annual. So any time that you have a new one, you need to resubmit. If you start submitting invoices in July or August, for next year's invoices, and you don't have a new approved rate, then we need to reflect French and indirect at 0%. And then once you get it approved, you can retroactively just bill for those two costs. Okay. This is a cost reimbursement MOU, so you have to show proof of payment for all your costs, except for your lump sum payment that is going to be your contribution towards the loan, because you don't have any cost yet. You're actually getting money to be able to issue loans. Your proof of costs, incurred costs for those loans actually take place on a monthly basis, as you're submitting to us how many loans you issue and the costs associated with issuing those loans. Okay, so that's why you still need to submit monthly reports, showing, number of loans issue, progress towards, your closing costs, your legal costs, for it. Tracy went over the limits for each of those components: 2% for closing costs per loan, $10,000 for legal fees per loan. Those are the max allowed. If you have in kind, a lot of your in kind might be a cash contribution towards your loan. So we're expecting that in kind to be taking place at the beginning of your first invoice. You asking for money, then you put in your money, your one-to-one match. We do have other programs that have in kind that are not related to the loans. They might be in kind to, a planning function, another, portion of your work. And in that case, then your in kind will be taking place throughout the MOU. We only going to verify that if, by the end of the MOU that you have to match the 100% of your in kind. And if you had in kind in that month, we do want supporting documentation that proves, where those costs, took place. So that goes into that. And then let's go into the next one. The order of how you submit your document, and we just put in this because it makes it easier that everybody submits it in the same order. And it keeps it, easy for you, that you actually put in the packages monthly after month, in the same, in the same order. So we're expecting cost reimbursement summary to be signed and dated in your letterhead, being your first page, your progress report that follows, your line item billing, loans issue details, if you have so, your ODC summary, if you have ODC cost. And then after that will be your supporting documentation, will be composed of either your labor report or your payroll registers and signed timesheets. And then, if you have in kind that is labor related, then we're expecting information about your in kind labor, actual hours and dollars for that. Any ODC receipts and any invoices, any proof of payment for your invoices. So if you had consultant invoices, then we want an invoice and we want to see that you actually pay for that invoice. So either, pay stub or something like that for your ACH transfer for your consultant. For your loans, any supporting documentation for the loan. So probably a copy of, the loan, and then the legal fees, and then your closing fees, anything that shows, proves, that the loan has been issued, and then the costs associated with that. Your rate confirmation worksheet and your scope of work approval form needs to be included only for your first invoice and only any other ones when you make a change. So you have a new rate confirmation worksheet amended, approved, then we want that in that next invoice package. And the same thing with if you had an amendment to your scope of work approval, we want it in your next invoice when that scope of work approval gets effective. Okay. We have a list of guidelines for these allowances that we are attaching. And for some reason, I'm having problems opening. Let me try from over here. So this list is included. It's included in your training documents. And I'm just gonna go over some of the most common, mistakes. Some of the problems that we have is that either the hours, claimed do not match either the timesheet or your labor report, or the hourly rate that you're including for billing does not match your, pay stubs, or your labor report. Sometimes, people are including for vacation, sick leave, any leave time, we do not reimburse for that. That's not, that should be part of your fringe benefit package. That's not part of our support towards the program. If we have any of these allowances in labor, we obviously if you have a base of labor for your fringe and your indirect, then there's going to be an associated, disallowance in fringe and indirect because your labor costs went down. For consultants, usually it's duplicate invoices, or if you are allowed to procure, for a consultant and you need a SCOX review of that procurement, then, or approval for that consultant, then, you need to make sure that that takes place. That is delineated in your MOU if you need that, So please just coordinate with your PM for that component. Travel expenses, we utilize the state of California policy for your travel expenses. So regardless of what you paid, if you pay more than what is allowed, we limit you to what the state is allowing it. If you pay less, we pay you based on your actual, okay? So no more than what the state allows, but if you pay less, we pay at the lower rate. So make sure that you follow the state for both the lodging and for the meals claim, verify that. And you can easily find the link is provided in your MOU, but you can easily search for it by, looking at state of California, travel policy, and you'll be able to find it. Other costs, make sure that they're allowable expenses. Obviously we do not allow for any alcoholic beverages, lobbying expenses, and items such as that. Sub consultants, if you have any, the same issues that we have with consultants. And then at the end of the year or at the beginning of the year, the issues that we normally have is that when you're trying to claim for expenses in the wrong fiscal year, so if you order goods, if you order something, at the end of June, but you didn't receive it, then we cannot reimburse you for it because, you haven't received the goods and you haven't paid for the goods, So it's based on, items, cost incur. So those costs should be going into your July invoice instead of your June invoice. Same thing happens with your July invoice, if you incur costs in June, labor or other costs, consultant costs, and you pay for it in June, you need to bill for it in June. You cannot claim it in July because now we're looking at a different budget year and a different fiscal year, So just keep in mind that at the end of the year that you need to be paying extra attention to the period of performance and when those costs get incurred. If you have any questions when you're doing your June invoice, please reach out to us and, we'll be more than happy to give you some guidance on how to address your specific questions. We do have a fringe benefit worksheet. I'm not going to go over how to fill it out, but let me open it so that for those of you that nonprofit that indicated, what do you do if you don't have a rate approved? One of the options is to fill this spreadsheet, which your cost for your French, and then have an accountant verify that the information is accurate. And then we'll be providing, we will review that and approve that and allow you to use that rate, And normally when people don't have a rate, they will utilize this plus the 50% de minimis for your overhead, because this only calculates your French benefit component. And then the verification for your 15% is just a form that we asking you to certify that, you have the ability to track your overhead, separately you have internal controls, and all that information is reflected in here. And then we ask you, to fill it out if that is appropriate, if you concur with that, and then you sign it, and then we'll be then allow you to use 15%. If you wanted to use 15% eventually for a federally funded program, this is not a federally funded program, but if you wanted to use 15%, then there's guidance in similar forms that need to be filled out and submitted to Caltrans or to your agency. Just throwing that information in there in the event that you have other programs that if you want to get it approved by the feds already, you can do that, and then it can apply to us in addition to any other grant that you might have, with federally funds. So that is kind of like the end of the presentation. I'll answer any questions that you might have. Obviously, I think some of your programs, some of your MOUs are not yet finalized, or you are in the process of getting those signed, in the process of finalizing your SAFs. So once we have all that ready, I know we have the 21st, of each month. So that will depend on when we get all that completed, your SAF completed, your invoice template, and then we'll send it to you. So in the event that your first invoice needs an extension, we obviously will work with that, or we allow you to submit it on the next month invoice, So, so just wanted to point that out, because the timing on when those things are taking place might be different for each agency. So we definitely will work with the PM on giving you an update for that first invoice deadline. So any questions, Tracy?
No question in the chat, B.
Okay. Anybody else? I mean, I don't see any hands raised, but any questions? Well, then that will conclude then our training. We again, thank you for attending. I hope that you found it useful. We will definitely share all the materials and then the recording once it becomes available. And then we more than welcome to, receive any questions you might have and, provide any additional guidance, Our goal is to make sure that this is as smooth as possible, ensuring that, you're able to submit invoices timely, for us to be able to reimburse you timely, and obviously accomplish great programs. So we thank you for your partnership with our NOFA program, and we looking forward to working with you. Thank you.